girl boss. For the newer generations, the phrase girl boss has evolved to mean an independent, strong-willed, and impactful woman. According to Urban Dictionary, a girl boss takes charge of her own circumstances in work and life. In the past, in a society in which women were confined to premeditated roles, Nellie Bly, utilizing her typewriter, her diaries, and her pen, could be considered the original girl boss. Nellie Bly's revolutionary journalistic achievements during the late 19th century served as a turning point in both journalism and gender equality, challenging societal norms, exposing social injustices, and inspiring transformative change that continues to resonate in history. Nellie Bly's life, legacy, and pursuit of truth revolutionized the field of investigative journalism and gender equality. She was born on May 5, 1864, in Cochrane Mills, Pennsylvania, as Elizabeth Cochrane. Young Elizabeth grew up surrounded by a supportive family that encouraged her curiosity and thirst for knowledge. Despite facing financial hardships, Elizabeth's parents instilled in her the belief that education was a gateway to a better future. Her formative years were filled with a passion for writing, as she would often compose articles and letters that showcased her sharp intellect and acute observations. In 1885, Elizabeth Cochrane's life took a turn when she read a scathing article in the Pittsburgh Dispatch, a local newspaper. Outraged by the article's derogatory tone towards women, she penned a response under the pseudonym Nellie Bly, inspired by a popular song of the time period. Impressed by her writing, the newspaper's editor invited her for an interview, which led to her first foray into journalism. After some time with the Dispatch, Bly was confined to writing about topics that bored her, such as gossip, fashion, and reviews of the arts. She soon moved to New York, searching for a more exciting career in journalism. After this, her thrilling endeavors with the world began. Nellie Bly's self-initiative to shatter misogynistic societal standards allowed her to pave her way in the field of journalism as one of the first female investigative reporters. In 1890, Bly expressed interest in overturning the record of the fictional Phileas Fogg, the main character of Jules Verne's hit novel, Around the World in 80 Days. Her editor, initially wary of this idea, stated, "There is no use talking about it. No one but a man can do this." Bly responded, "Start the man, and I'll start the same day for some other newspaper and beat him." It was not societally acceptable for women to travel unchaperoned, but Bly overcame the stigma and made many acquaintances while traveling. Bly also ached to prove her editor wrong in terms of how much luggage she would take, as her editor claimed that women would have too much excess luggage to make such a large journey. Bly then set off with a minuscule amount of luggage, traveling from New York to London, then to Paris, then all across Afro-Eurasia, finally circling back to New York. She carefully documented all of the details in her novel, Around the World in 72 Days. Along the journey, Nellie Bly even met the famous Jules Verne and his wife, both of whom sent her congratulations when she stepped foot in New York. Bly proved that a woman could make the same journey faster than a man could, and she was not unrivaled in competition. With the announcement of Bly's journey, a woman named Elizabeth Bisland was inspired to attempt to oust Bly from the competition, proving Bly's impact on female empowerment in a male-dominated endeavor. Bly's insightful exposés and articles written about the various grievances in her society incited mass societal reforms that bettered life for many. The most significant one of these was 10 Days in a Madhouse, a scathing critique of the United States asylum system. Bly, aged 23, feigned insanity in order to enter the infamous Women's Lunatic Asylum on Blackwell Island. After thoroughly practicing, Bly began her expedition to insanity. She entered a cost-effective home for women and effectively scared the guests enough to be taken to court, where she was examined by a plethora of doctors, police officers, and court officials, who then officially deemed her to be crazy. They admitted her to the asylum on Blackwell. After entering the facility, The abuses faced by the patients became apparent almost immediately, and Nellie continued to describe the freezing cold conditions, thin, scratchy dresses, and inadequate nutrition that the so-called insane received. Many of these patients were physically ill before coming, and many became sick after time on the island. To add insult to injury, the nurses were horrible to the patients, with many being physically and verbally abused. One chapter of the novel she wrote was even called Choking and Beating Patients, where she details the horrific way a mentally disabled patient was abused. She describes, "She grew more hysterical every moment until they pounced upon her and slapped her face and knocked her head in a lively fashion. This made the poor creature cry the more, and so they choked her. Yes, actually choked her. Then they dragged her out to the closet, and I heard her terrified cries hush into smothered ones. After several hours' absence, she returned to the sitting room, and I plainly saw the marks of their fingers on her throat for the entire day." One of the worst aspects of the asylum was that many of the women were never clinically insane in the first place.
Many of the so-called mad women were not actually mad. They simply refused to conform to the narrow standards of society. For example, there were women who married without their parents' consent, or women who refused to marry at all, women who couldn't get over postpartum depression or witnessing some horrible tragedy, and women whose husbands simply got tired of them.
After 10 days, Bly's editor arranged for her to be discharged from the awful facility, and she got to work compiling her notes for the novel. Needless to say, after the public caught wind of the treatment of the mentally ill, those who were essentially voiceless in an already judgmental society, many government reforms were made to asylums, aided by Bly and a woman named Dorothea Dix, who was an asylum reform activist. After this, the lives of many mentally ill people improved as they received more humane treatment afterwards. Nellie Bly's bravery and willingness to explore dangerous situations let her develop a new form of investigative journalism called muckraking, with many dubbing her the original muckraker. Nellie Bly fearlessly ventured into dangerous territories, uncovering corruption and shedding light on hidden truths. Muckraking was a style of investigative journalism that aimed to expose societal ills and prompt transformative change. She dove headfirst into the darkest corners of society to uncover the truth. Nellie Bly investigated the harsh working conditions in factories during the late 19th century. She exposed the grueling hours, low wages, and unsafe environments faced by factory workers, particularly women and children. Bly's articles shed light on the exploitation and led to increased awareness and calls for labor reforms. Recognizing the plight of child laborers, Bly exposed the harsh realities faced by children working in mines, factories, and sweatshops. Her investigative reporting drew attention to the exploitation of young workers, prompting public outcry and ultimately contributing to the enactment of child labor laws. Bly also delved into the realm of political corruption, revealing the unethical practices and backroom deals that plagued the political landscape of her time. She exposed bribery and manipulation within government institutions, calling attention to the need for transparency and accountability. Bly also covered major developments in the First World War from Europe, diversifying the topics she covered in her articles. Nellie Bly's legacy is one that continues to resonate in the realms of journalism, gender equality, and social reform. She left a lasting mark on history and set a precedent for future generations. Her fearless pursuit of the truth and immersive investigative reporting style laid the foundation for modern journalism. As one of the first female investigative reporters, she shattered societal expectations and demonstrated that women were equally capable of tackling hard-hitting stories. Her achievements provided inspiration and paved the way for generations of female journalists to come, helping to break down barriers and achieve greater gender equality in the field of journalism. Bly serves as an inspiration to all who aspire to challenge the status quo. In recognition, Nellie Bly has been honored posthumously with numerous awards and inductions into various halls of fame. Her work continues to be celebrated, ensuring that her legacy lives on as a beacon of courage and the power of journalism.